Hello, this is Gretchen, the Verdant Crafter. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 10 cards I made using the August 2018 Simon Says Stamp card kit called Fly Me Away. This card kit was very fun to use, but it was a little intimidating because the stamp set was so big and intricate, it really felt like something that you needed to put time and effort into coloring so that you got something very beautiful. And when I started using this kit, it was August and I was preparing to go back to school. So I didn't have time to sit there and color these beautiful images, which is why it's midway through September and I'm finally finishing using this kit. So this card kit is jam-packed. We get one sheet of 120-pound cardstock, white from Simon Says Stamp, one sheet of a 100-pound cardstock in cornflower blue, smoke, and peacock. My peacock was stained. I think the candy must have gotten wet and dissolved onto my cardstock. So I covered up that spot. The paper pack is 6 by 6 inches and it's from Moda Scrap, and it's flying scrap paper. I love this because it has these great watercolor looks and it's so pretty. There is a 6 by 8 stamp set called Beautiful Flowers. There are 2 envelopes from Simon Says Stamp in metallic cornflower and metallic white. There is a 3D texture fade botanical embossing folder from Tim Holtz. This is a fantastic embossing folder and I was so excited to get it. There is 1 ounce of Tim Holtz Distress Resist spray. That was very fun to play with and I'm glad that it came because I wanted to try it. There are 3 dots of Daniel Smith watercolor in Quedacro Red, Prussian Blue, and Arolin Cobalt Yellow. And there's 1 sheet of Susie Plantamura. And of course, there was the Tonic Studio Gold Pearl Mirror Card Satin Effect cardstock. So like I said, it was really jam-packed with a lot of different things. My first card is very simple. I cut out this beautiful hot air balloon with a stitched rectangle die, and my card back is made with the smoke cardstock that I sprayed with Sukaneko Shimmer Spritz. My sentiment is thanks, heat embossed with Simon Says Stamp Antique Gold on a dark gray cardstock. I would have loved to have it match my card base, but I didn't have that color, and I wanted to use the other half of that card for another card base. For my background, all I did was add a couple clear dots. In this case, I used the lacquer pen from Hero Arts, but you could have used glossy accents from Ranger. You could have used the Nouveau glaze. You could have used Nouveau the clear dots. I also know that, and I haven't tried them, that Gina K has some clear dots. So they look a lot like this, I think. This is a very simple card and it was a great way to jump in. I love the watercolor effects from this paper and it was so hard to use because I really just wanted to hoard all of it. So here we go. And now we're going to jump into card number 2. Card number 2, again, features the beautiful paper. So I cut out the paper using a stitched rectangle and I'm going to put it onto a card base. You can see that there's the light blue card base. But before we do that, I stamped on a graphics shimmery, oh my goodness, shimmery vellum. It came in a graphics pack, the You Are Beautiful, and I'm simply wrapping that around my card so that it provides a difference between the background, all of the buildings and the sentiment. I used, I believe, a Hero Arts sparkling silver embossing powder for this, and it would have been too close in tone to simply have it. And in these pictures, it's hard to see the sentiment, but in real life, you can very easily see it. As additional embellishments, I'm using Nouveau drops in silver lining. I'm just adding these in groups of 3, 1 larger one, 1 medium one, and 1 smaller one. And then I'm going to pick it up and sort of thwack the back a little bit to help them flatten. My first few cards are very simple. It's all about making the paper shine. I think these papers, a lot of them sort of had natural things that came with using them. And that's great. It's an easy way to get started, to get your creativity flowing. And some of these papers were, again, so hard to use because I simply wanted to keep the paper forever. Moving on to card number 3, this is another one of those sort of natural cards. I finally pulled out that Distress Resist spray, and I had done a sample where I sprayed it on and let it dry and did some color blending on it, which I loved, but I didn't do that on this one. I wanted it to be larger droplets, so I'm sort of splatting it and dotting it. Then I'm going to dump a bunch of the Simon Says Stamp Antique Gold Embossing Powder on it. And what I wish I had done was let it dry for a few hours or overnight. So I had done this and then I immediately heat embossed it. And you can see that the bigger droplets where it's still wet, it's got this not the nicest texture. It's sort of bubbled up and the liquid below has boiled, which makes it not be as smooth and pretty as you'd like. I am doing stamp surgery and I cut apart, "You are a treasure to me." So the stamp will just say, "You are a treasure." I'm using Versamark to heat emboss this with, again, the antique gold embossing powder. I really like this gold color. I think it's a little brassy and it's very pretty. It's not too, sometimes gold can, I don't really know how to describe it. I want to say it's a little too green, but I'm not sure that that's the correct. I know that's not, yeah, we're doing great. Okay, so for a background, I thought about using the Tonic Studio paper that came in the kit, and I decided not to. So I am using a piece of gold vellum. This is sort of shimmery vellum from Graphics, and I've cut it out using a larger stitched rectangle die so that they will just nest together. And of course, I'm doing so well at lining those up together. But the great thing about using sort of the removable adhesive is that you can pull them apart and try again when things don't quite line up. I'm also trimming my card base with my scissors just because even though I scored them and cut them, I thought straight, I didn't cut them and score them quite as straight as I should have. Moving on to card number 4, we are going back to that shimmer spritz, the resist spray, and I'm splattering it on. This time I go for more splats. In my last card, I went for more bigger droplets. This paper looks like a watercolor, but it sort of has the hints of floral in the background. And this one, even though you don't see it, I actually do wait for this to dry, and then I heat emboss it. And it looks so much better than the other ones, where I wasn't as patient. I'm gluing or taping that down to my Peacock cardstock. And in this case, I'm using the cardstock, I think, that was stained. So I'm covering that right up. I'm also putting down this flower. So I stamped and heat embossed 2 gold flowers, 2 silver flowers, and I'm not sure what else. Maybe 2 purple flowers. So I used a variety of different embossing powders. I stamped them, I watercolored them, and then I fussy cut them out. The 2 other or 3 other embossing powders I used, one was Lawn Fawn Silver, one was Nouveau Purple Haze, and one was the Hero Arts Sparkling Silver embossing powder. I also stamped and heat embossed them on vellum and didn't color them. So in some cases I cut them out, and in some cases I sort of wrapped them around. This blue flower with the gold heat embossing has been popped up with foam tape, and I stamped "You Are a Treasure" and gold heat embossed that on a piece of vellum that I've fishtailed. I'm just gluing that onto my paper. So yeah, very similar designs, which I'm realizing now. So here I'm moving on to card number 5. I am using the 3D Texture Fade embossing folder. So one thing you want to do that I don't show you is spritz the paper with water, which I did, and run it through 3 times. So Tim Holtz apparently likes to say 3D 3 times. Here you can see I've done one with the shimmer paper and one with just one of the regular papers that came in the kit. I'm also going to use, I believe, ink and gold, Nouveau Mousse. I'm using just a little foam dauber and I'm going to rub it over the raised parts of this paper. I love how it just catches the raised parts and really makes that design shine. I think it's such a fun design. I especially, it kills me. There's this beautiful flower that I love that's right in the middle of that, and I wish there were more of those flowers on this. So with a 3D embossing folder, it's thicker than normal embossing folders, so you have to have the right sandwich. You can't just go with your normal sandwich. So it took me a while. I should have just looked it up, but I just tried, okay, this is not moving through. I'm going to take one of my plates off and try again. Never force your embossing folder through or your die machine to take something that it shouldn't. Here I just cut it at a diagonal. I have a piece of foam tape and I have another piece of paper cut at a diagonal. I'm going to glue them together, and on one of these pieces I stamped thanks with a blue ink. I think that I used the Distress Oxide ink in Blueprint Sketch, and the other one I stamped and heat embossed thanks with the gold embossing powder. And on both of them, I used a strip of the gold shimmer paper sort of as a border between the sentiment and the actual, the pretty card that we made. So because of this, I made 2 of these cards. And I like them a lot. They're very simple, and they're actually pretty much the same design as I made for welcome cards for my students. Okay, we are moving on to card number 6. This card was, oh my goodness, one of my favorite papers. So you can see that I've sprayed and I've used the Distress Resist spray and I've used some gold embossing powder. And I'm going to use a slanted sentiment strip or stitched sentiment strip from MFT to cut out this little tag or this little sentiment strip. It's stitched around the edge just like my card. My card has stitching around the edge as well. And I'm stamping and heat embossing thanks with gold embossing powder. I'm going to pop that up with my flower with foam tape. And behind it, I'm going to have all of these flourishes. You can see now, I've cut them out of the shimmer, the gold cardstock with an MFT fancy flourish or formal flourish. It was free with 60 die, I want to say a year or two, probably 2 years ago. So I'm just trimming these down and I'm going to line them up where I want them. Then I'm going to glue them down and I'm going to pop up my flower and my sentiment. This is a very simple card and I think you can easily see how gorgeous the paper is. So let me know what your favorite cards were. I did make more than 10 cards with this kit. I only show you videos of making 10, but I also show you pictures of the rest of the cards that I made. I had started these before school started when I was in this kick to use up kits and use everything that's in them and use them to my best of my ability, which is a lot of fun. It's a great way to challenge yourself and think outside the box. And then, of course, school started and everything snowballs because you're so busy with everything when school starts and you're a teacher. And now it's, September 16th, and I'm finally sitting down to finish using this kit and finish making the video. So the other thing that I used was some clear crystal drops in the background of that card along with the gold splashes. We're moving on to card number 7, and again, this is one of my favorite papers because they're all pretty much my favorite papers. I love the purples and the greens and the turquoise and the blue. So this paper I have stamped on the top and the bottom and heat embossed that big floral piece with Hero Arts glittered silver embossing powder. I also took a piece of paper that was slightly wider and I ran my Versamark ink around it along the edge and heat embossed with that embossing powder. my sentiment says, "You are a treasure." I'm just lining those up, and I'm going to pop the whole thing up with foam tape. This will allow me to have, and the length of this is 5.5 inches. So it's going to go from top of the card base to the bottom, but it's going to leave a little bit of the card base on the edge showing. I'm going to put this on my cornflower blue embossing folder. And what I don't show, but I will end up doing, is when I send or give this card, I'm going to use the metallic cornflower blue shimmer envelope because it does match the cardstock. It is shimmery and it's just very pretty. So here I am cutting a bunch of fun foam so that I can pop this up evenly. Without having done the math, I think it's probably a little bit more, just looking at how much a roll of foam tape costs versus how much it costs to buy some fun foam, more economical to buy fun foam. But one of the things that I've started to worry about is fun foam. I'm pretty sure it's not biodegradable or not very biodegradable. So while I do pop some things up, I'm trying to limit how much I pop things up. Here I'm just using a little brush, and I'm using one of my distress inks. I think it's smoke gray hickory smoke, to try and just make the sentiment pop. And well, my goal was just to make it darker behind it. I think it also sort of grays it out, so it's just not as pretty as it was before. I'm adding some more of the silver lining Nuvo drops, and I'm just going to pop that on the back so that the drops flatten and dry evenly. One thing to note, even though these are dry within 24 hours, it's better if you don't stack them, just because the weight will still, even though they're dry to the touch, cause the Nuvo drops to flatten a little bit more. So we have moved on to card number 8, and this, I'm not actually showing you the whole card because I did this first part and then I stepped away and did a bunch of other things, and then I'm like, oh hey, I still have to make this card, and I didn't film it because I wasn't thinking. So I have used the 3D Texture Fades embossing folder to do one of the pieces of gold cardstock, and now I'm using some fluid acrylics from Golden. I'm using teal and I'm using phthalo blue, the green shade. Yes, there is a phthalo blue red shade, so that's why I'm making the distinction. I've used one of my Ranger foam pads and I've sort of swirled it on to apply it. Here are the two cards, one that's dried that I'm putting away and the other one, it's still wet. So originally I had just gone on with a paper towel and tried to just remove it on the raised portions, and I didn't quite like how that looked. So now I'm going more heavily with this piece of paper towel and I'm rubbing it everywhere to try and remove it. So the only places that the acrylic paint is staying is in the crevices. It adds a much more distressed look and I really like it. I actually wish that I hadn't waited for it to dry as much as it did because there's a little bit too much paint for me and I like the look where there's less paint. One of the other interesting things was, with so much rubbing and with so much moisture, in some cases the gold finish came off a little, so you get some silver finish. And that was the card that was fully made. I did use some of the acrylic paint just along the edge of a piece of card strip to add detail. We are moving on to card number 9. This is one of those cards where I had stamped and heat embossed this beautiful, beautiful flower, and I didn't quite know what to do with it. So I used marbled vellum from Graphics, and I stamped and heat embossed with the Hero Art Sparkling Silver Embossing Powder. I've cut a panel to be 4 inches by 5.25 inches, and I've stamped and silver heat embossed "You Are a Treasure." Now I'm just lining up that image sort of around it. I'm going to wrap it around it so that the glue, or the tape that's on the back that I just put there is there. And I'm going to cut off the excess. This way, between the floral of the paper and the floral of the vellum, my sentiment is sort of sandwiched in there. And now that I'm holding the card, my sentiment is also crooked. I also used some of the silver lining Nuvo drops, and I put this on a regular white card base. A lot of my card bases are white because I'm making more than 10 cards at the moment, and because I do like the look of a white card base. I think it just adds a touch of elegance, especially when you're using paper that has some white in it or that needs that contrast. So this year has been interesting. We have a new chemistry teacher who unfortunately couldn't start right away. So my father is being a very good sport, even though he's retired, or he just retired last year. And he has come back as our substitute chemistry teacher, which is fun because we're literally working across the hall from each other. And I never thought that would actually happen. And it's also interesting because I live alone, and living with another human is always interesting when you're used to living alone. He lives with my mom quite a distance away, so during the week he stays with me. But it's a lot of fun, and before I talk about these things, and he'd be like, "Yep, or just not quite understand it." So there's a different dimension when you work together. You have these memories together, obviously, and you understand what someone's talking about when they're talking about whatever's going on or how things are happening. So it's been fun. One more week, and then our new chemistry teacher will be starting, which is really exciting. But it's a little sad because, then I'm not working with my dad anymore. And I'm that dorky person who likes working with their dad. So for card number 10, we're actually doing a dual card. I have very little ink. I actually have one ink pad and one, 5-pack of paper that matches. So they're from Hero Arts, and they happen to be blue violet. And I love this blue color. It is a blue color, not really a violet color, and I love the blue ink. So I'm stamping on a piece of 4¼ by 5½ cardstock the big floral image and happy birthday. Then I'm going to clean my stamp. I'm going to put down a piece of the blue cardstock, and I'm going to use Versamark, and I'm going to stamp and white heat emboss it. So what you see is actually a very poor stamping. So I tried to go back and stamp on top of it, but I didn't line them quite up. So this piece of paper that you see me playing with, I actually end up putting into the recycle bin, or rather using a scrap paper, because when I restamped, it didn't line up. So the final stamped image is not shown on camera until I actually put it together. See right there, you see a double stamp, and it looks like it's stamped quite right, but once I heat embossed it, I could see that it was off, and that just bothered me. So this is a sort of 2-for-1 stamp or design. You get 2 cards from one design, and they line up perfectly because I am using my MISTI. I was using a creative corner. I am going to line up 2 of the cards, and you actually saw I did have 2 of the white cards, but I totally spilled. Actually, I think my cat totally walked in ink and then stepped on it. And when I tried to use my mono sand eraser, it just ate away too much of the paper to look good. So here I'm lining up my 2 stamped images, and I'm going to use my paper trimmer to cut them apart. I'm going to line them up. So on the bottom of one card, I'll have the white, and on the top of it, I'll have the blue, and I'll have the reverse on the other. So it's a lot like a film negative and a film positive. I don't know about you, but I always find it fascinating the way that film is, it's negative. What was white is black on film, and what was black in real life is white on film. I think that's just so cool. Here, things weren't lined up quite right, and just because this is so important to line it up, I am taking the time to make sure everything is perfectly lined up. My papers aren't quite, I don't think they were quite the right size, so I do end up trimming my cardstock. And I use gloss white Nuvo drops on the blue paper. and I use Midnight Blue Crystal Drops from Nuvo on the white paper. I think it would be really fun to make a bunch of these with different sentiments and give them as a card gift, as a card set for someone. I think it would be also pretty awesome just to make a set for yourself to give to people. Certainly, if you were using, the right colors, you could use this as anything, as a sympathy card, as a happy birthday card, as a thank you card, as a, congratulations card. My white gloss drops there, they had some sort of clog, so I was just removing the clog. I've never had that happen before, so it was odd, but you're dealing with some sort of, I think these must be sort of an acrylic type thing. It's going to happen. There's going to be a leak of air. Something's going to clog up every so often. To have only clogged up once, I think is pretty amazing. So next up, you're going to see the rest of the cards that I made. There are close-up pictures, and I will, in a few days or a few hours, whatever comes first, actually I have no clue, post pictures to my Instagram account, which is Verdant Crafter. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed, subscribe if you want to see more of these, and if you'd like, tell me what your favorite card was. I think that I really liked one of the ones with the beautiful, and here's what's left over. So my card set, the 3D embossing folder, some of the paper, not very much because again, it was sort of my goal to use up all of the paper. There was just a little bit of the Daniel Smith watercolor paper left. And of course, my camera wasn't set up very well. So here we're looking at all of the cards. So my favorite cards definitely had those beautiful hot air balloons. I love the flowers and I love the paper, but I really love the hot air balloons. So what was your favorite? Thank you guys for watching and listening. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you were inspired. I'm not sure when I'm going to get to the mermaid kit from September, but I'm super excited for the October kit from Simon Says Stamp that just came out. It's got the alcohol inks and the foil, and who doesn't love alcohol inks and all kinds of autumn colors? Because autumn is really an amazing time of year, especially if you live in New England, where all of the leaves change color. Thank you. Bye.